Almighty God, we thank you for the blessing and the privilege to be called to work at this time in Earth's history. We thank you for your mercy and your goodness towards us as you have walked us along step by step. We ask you for your grace and forgiveness, Lord, where we have been slow to hear, slow to understand, and even slow to respond. And there's so much we need to understand. And we pray that your Holy Spirit would be with us as we go through these reviews, that we would be prepared to teach, prepared to defend the waymarks, and prepared to help others through the midnight cry message. And we just ask your blessing upon us, and we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so Christine and Francisco were not with us for any of the
Article 1.
Yeah, and so actually there's just a couple of main things I want to show for them, and then maybe we'll try to, if we can summarize a couple things, we'll do that. And then the notes I sent out, so you've got the notes on them as well. And if I have to clear the board, I will, if I need it. Okay, so here we go at the beginning. These are done by Aaron, and I've been finding them really helpful. When it comes to going to 9/11, we still want what we're trying to work towards is not just reviewing May 2020 to July 2021, which that's all in the works. And sometimes we have days where there's not somebody ready to teach. So we're going to fill in with defending the waymarks as well. So we worked some on the 2520, and I'd really love to see others then sign up as well to go through and represent so that we can all have the practice at being able to defend our waymarks. But I believe that we would want to go, I didn't do this, I didn't plan this, so we're not really going in the order that we ought to. We started with the 2520, which is basically our 9/11 to 2014 dispensation. But when we go forward and we teach people, we want to be laying out the reform lines first. 1989 and the reform lines and the formalization of the message. So that will be our next step, since we seem to be going backwards by a fault of mine. It was not planned.
Question.
Yeah.
Question. So when you say that 1989 and the waymarks defending the reform line, are you discussing the 144,000 line?
I'll show you that in a minute.
Okay. Thank you. I just need some clarity because I'm trying to hold what you said in my mind.
Yeah, no problem. And it will kind of walk through that on the next page when we go through this page, because we're going to review just a couple of pages here. So this is what Aaron has put together for 12 prophetic events that occurred on September 11th, 2001. Okay, so Article 1, that's this article here that we already went through, discusses the four winds were restrained and the third woe began. So when I show you the next page, you'll kind of see where that, here. Okay, you'll see where we get that from on the reform line. So this article covers those four winds being restrained and the third woe began. Article 2, which we're going to work on tonight, that's the first angel's message was empowered and the second angel's message arrived as they're being repeated at the end of the world. God enters into a covenant with his people after he proved line upon line. So that's the when I talk about the reform lines, he proves line upon line, and we'll go over that. And then the SDA leadership was passed by. So that's what we're going to look at tonight. And then there's Article 3. I won't go through each point, but we're going to go through Article 3 and Article 4 as well. So 12 events, and we want to be able to internalize these 12 events so that we're skilled in giving the evidence for 9/11. And so this one here we kind of want to touch on. So here's what he has put together in this file, and I might minimize it just a little bit more so we can see it all. And And he started out with the agricultural model up here, the basic agricultural model, which is developed through the Bible. You have the 5 fingers there, the 4 dispensations. You have the plowing, former rain, latter rain, and harvest. So those 5 dispensations carry through to each of the reform lines, and I think we're all familiar with that. So then, answering your question, Susan, we're going to look at several of them if this helps. We're going to look at several of them. So when we go into that part of the study, after we finish these 9/11 ones, since we're working our way backwards, this would be where we would start with that basic line upon line, the basic reform lines and line upon line, and showing, you know, how that was opened up at 1989. So reform lines was opened up at 1989, but question, there's other evidence for 1989 now. What is it? Because in 1989, you didn't have all the evidence. You remember how she laid out and kind of split the priest line into 2 sections and put 2014 as you get the box, and the box has the Sunday law marked on it, but you don't know what's in the box, if you remember that. I kind of, in my head, picture that as looking at 1989, because she also says that in 1989, the whole message came and it was encapsulated. So I was kind of thinking of that as that same box, but it's unpacked all along the way. So in 1989, you have the arrival. What we want to look at is, because we know that 1989 and 9/11 were not given to us, they were manufactured out of inspiration and parables. Okay, so in 1989, we know that Elder Jeff began studying and opened up the reform lines, these reform lines, line upon line. So what was my question? What's my question? So what other evidence is there for 1989 besides just what we know? Go ahead.
The 2520?
Explain
Or is that what we already know? Huh?
Yeah, explain that.
Okay, so during in year 2009, Elder Permender had been studying and came up with this presentation that he presented in 20 presentations on the 2520, and explained how William Miller and Hiram Edson both knew the 2520 line, but they knew 2 separate ones, and they start at 2 separate times. And if they had put those 2 lines together, they would have been able to figure out the time of the end in 1963, like 7 years before that, but they didn't put their lines together, so they weren't able to figure out that chiasm. But Elder Permender had put those 2 lines together and figured out that chiasm, and with that, he was able to see, subtract 2520 from, it was either adding or subtracting. I'm not sure which way he did it, if he did it forward or backwards. Because I haven't watched those presentations in a long time. So I don't know if he subtracted 2520 from 1989 and figured out that it matched up with the 2520 lines that William Miller and Hiram Edson did, or if he added 2520 to their lines and got our dates for 1989 and the Sunday Law and some of the other dates that he got. So by studying the 2520 from Hiram Edson and William Miller, he was able to get a second witness for our dates of 1989 and the other dates.
But how did the 2520 get him to 1989? Counting backwards from 19.
Isn't it the 126? Wasn't it the 126 and the 151?
Yeah, that's.
But didn't Tess do that? I thought Tess did that when she did the 10-year presentation of the Midnight Cry.
No, he knew the 126 and the 151 before.
So she studied it from Elder
Okay.
Parmenter.
Yeah. Okay, so
And she added in that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it wasn't accounting back, and I think that that's probably what Christine meant. It wasn't counting back 2520, but there's a method that he used. Does anybody remember the method that he used to count from 1989 and how we got confirmation of 1989? And Susan basically just touched on it. We know it comes from the 126 and the 151, right?
Right. So it's from, was it 1863?
If
The
you,
1863, the 126,
right,
right?
right,
That's, yeah, so that's 1989.
right. So that gave us another witness for 1989. So did everybody follow that? If anybody didn't, go ahead and say so, either in the chat or turn on your mic or.
Well,
Yeah, sorry.
I followed it, but I couldn't repeat it because it would be helpful if you could show it
Okay,
while he said it.
okay. Go ahead, Christine, what were you going to say real quick?
Oh, I just wanted to apologize because when I was saying subtracting 2520, that's what William Miller and Hiram Edson did to get the original 677 dates and 723, I think. But Elder Parmenter had to use the 126 and the 151 from the many Teculia Farson to get between the William Miller to our dates. Sorry about that.
I knew you knew that. I don't have it on this board. Can you see the board? Do I have it close enough?
It's kind of blurry for me.
He does go over it on the 2520 presentation with Chen Yi. He goes over this whole scenario about the 2520 that you add the 126 to 1863 to come out with 1989. And also I have copies of the line that Elaine has on the that she had. No, the other one.
Okay.
The one that you were showing on the screen.
Yeah, I have extra copies if anybody wants one.
Okay. I think I emailed, well, it's in the file that I sent for the Bible study.
Oh, okay.
So everybody has it actually. It's in that file, in that document. So actually, thank you. Everybody has it then. Okay, so just to give for Susan and anybody else, and this is probably pretty messy because there's a lot that's built up on here, but we're not going to do the whole structure. But I want one of you guys to be thinking to do this whole structure. Maybe that's a good project for you, Susan, to do the whole structure again. But you've got the full chiastic structure of the 2520 from 742 BC, 19 years to 723 BC, the northern tribes being scattered, and then 46 years later, you come to 677 when Manasseh is taken captive. Manasseh is where William Miller marked the 2520 for the tribe of Judah, the southern tribes. So 723 marks the northern tribes and ends in 1798. That's the host. 677 marks the southern tribes. If I said southern, I meant northern here. I don't. So this is the northern tribe, the southern tribes. 677 takes you to 1844, which is the sanctuary. So when you go to Daniel 8, and you had 46 years and 19 years. So when you go to Daniel 8:13, when he's asking how long for the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, how long shall the vision be of the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation to trample and trodden down the host and the sanctuary? So the Adventists and William Miller, they answered this question, and it was the 2,300 days, right? And the sanctuary would be cleansed. They thought the earth was the sanctuary. So Daniel Daniel, I'm trying to write and think at the same time, sorry. So Daniel 8:13 gives you an answer for the sanctuary. But Daniel 8:13 did not give you an answer for the host. So this answers the host. Does that make sense? Okay, so that answers the host. Okay, so going to, if you can see, I'm going to use this little spot up here. I think we went through this when we did our 25-20 study, but when you go to Daniel 5 is where you get the many, and Susan, you're going to remember this as soon as we start to say it. Many.
Yeah, I know that. I'm sorry, Elaine. I was wanting to see the line real quick of but what you're doing is fantastic. So don't get me wrong. But what Phil had said, something about the 1989 and the 1863, when he talked that out, I didn't have it in my mind on the line.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is a great refresher what you're doing. It's helping me anyway.
Okay.
So thank you.
So we don't need to do this part. You guys are okay on this part? This is Daniel 5 is where you get the many tekel upharsin, and the many tekel upharsin is where you then get the 126 and the 151. And we went through that a couple of weeks ago where you get the 126 and the 151. So I don't have this extended out to have our line on it, but we do have 1989 down here. Okay. So from your 1863 to 1989 was the 126. Is the 126. Okay. And then from, if I remember right, somebody help me make sure I don't get messed up, from 1888 to, is it 20? No, it's 2014. 1888 to 2014 was a 126. And somewhere in there, I know there's a 151, and there are others in there. I think the 151 goes here to 1863. Yeah, it does. So if I'm going to make it even messier here, this is a 151. Okay.
So he was doing the so the 126 represents the 1260.
A tenth. Where do you get the tenth from?
The 10th is from the I forget the is it Ezekiel? I forget the two scriptures it comes from.
You're kind of close.
There's two.
Yeah, who's the other one? No, it's not Ezekiel. The many tekel upharsin, the shekel measurement comes from Ezekiel, but the tenth comes from what prophet? What book?
Isn't that Amos?
Elijah.
Oh, Elijah.
Nope. What book? I guess I should say what book, because there's no book by Elijah. So what book does the tenth come from?
Is it the Numbers?
No. The tenth is from, I don't think I have it on here anywhere. The tenth is from Isaiah chapter 6. When he talks about the tenth that would come back. And I think there are other evidences that are escaping my mind right now, but the 10th would be a tenth of the 1260. So I guess that's what I'm saying. Two ways. You get the many tekel upharsin, which gives you 126. And then you also have the tenth of the 1260, which is 126. So he used this structure to get these dates. Okay. We didn't have this at that time. That came in here, right? 2009, 2012. 2012 is when he calculated out the time setting and predicted that 2014 would be the Sunday law, and he used the 126 to get there. Did everybody follow that? And I think this is a point that we didn't cover. So since we got this board up here, that we didn't cover last time, and I wrote it down over there, but I know Aaron brings this point up, but I don't think we covered it, or didn't mention it so thoroughly. But back here in 742, it was a period of civil war. It was when Syria was Confederate, united with the northern tribes. And they wanted to go conquer the southern tribe, Ahaz, to then put a lackey king in place so that they can control the southern tribes. So there's this civil war going on between the king of the north and the king of the south, and Syria is involved in 742 BC. So down here in 1863, you have civil war, right? So if you're looking at the mirror, so you have civil war. So also Isaiah 7, when he gives this prophecy, we understand when he gives the prophecy at 742 BC, and you have the 19 and the 46. So you have the 46 and the 19. And then also the prophecy was rejected. Ahaz rejects the prophecy, and James White rejects the prophecy. So it's pretty perfect chiasm. I don't know if perfect's the right word, but it's chiasm all fits. Does that make sense? Any questions? So we're going to keep doing these and having others do them until each one of us can teach each other these structures. So I did have that over here on Daniel 8:13, the question of how long. The answer to the sanctuary was 2,300 days. The answer to the host wasn't. In the Millerite history, there was no answer to the host. So the 2520 answers the host, and it's the gathering, scattering, and then a gathering in 1798. Okay. Did that? Are we okay with that? Then we need to look at that anymore, or are you okay? Everybody okay?
So it's like, Elaine, it's Isaiah 6:13 about the 10th shall return. And what was the other one?
Well, that was the only one I was giving. You guys were asking the many tickle you farson. Is that what you meant?
No, the 10th.
The 10th.
The 10th.
The 10th.
The two
is the
scriptures that reference it.
only one that I know of.
Huh?
Only one that I know of, and that's Isaiah 6. For this. And
Isaiah 6:13. I thought there was two.
Well,
Isn't there two?
maybe there may be another one, but it's actually representing the remnant. So it may be other scriptures that are talking about the remnant. The remnant represents the 10th. So that might be what you're thinking. I don't know. There may be another one for the 10th. The one I always know is Isaiah. But it also is representing the remnant. So if there's another one, I'm not remembering it right now. But I know that the 10th equals the remnant. So that might be what you're thinking, but maybe there's another one that I'm not thinking of right now. Possible. Okay. So you've got these reform lines, and the line upon line opens up, right? And what we just went through on Friday and finished off on Sabbath was covering the August 11th, 1840, being the four winds being restrained, and those four winds being restrained, we saw at 9/11, not 9/11 when the strike happened, but on November 9 of 2001, when Islam was restrained. So we see a restraint of Islam. So in the history of the Millerites, you have a message open up, right? The message is unsealed. And then you have the increase of knowledge and a formalization of the message. And then you have a test on that message. So in 1989, you have a message, and that's line upon line. You have the increase of knowledge on that. Then you have the formalization, which was the opening up and understanding of Daniel 11:40-45. So we know that 1989 was the papacy with her army, and her army is who in 1989? Who's the papacy's army?
United States.
The United States. So you have they're both representing the king of the north, and there's a fight with the king of the south, and the king of the south is the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union, the wall comes down in 1989. 1991, the Soviet Union collapses. So so then that's all being, this line upon line is opening up these reform lines. And then when August 11th, 1840 happened, there's a particular phrase that Ellen White uses to describe in great controversy. What does she say about this when this happened?
Didn't it give an impetus to the movement or something like that?
Right. It gave a wonderful impetus to the work, I think it was. So you have a first angel arrive. And so what does that mean when there's an impetus put on? You have a message that arrives and now you have an impetus put on it. What does that mean?
Do you mean that it's empowered?
Right. That's empowered. So you have a message that arrives, and then you go through this line. I don't remember how I just said that, so I'm going to say it a little bit differently depending on what I remember what I said. So you have a message arrive, right? And how did William Miller? Because then you have the increase of knowledge and the formalization of the message. And William Miller is understanding that Jesus is going to come in about 25 years, right? And we want to stick to kind of this line here. So he has a message that he understands that Jesus is going to come in about 25 years. How did he get that message? How did he come to understand that message? Method.
I don't remember. Hint, please.
So the question was, how did William Miller come to the understanding of 1843? Was that the question?
Yes. How did he come to understand that Jesus was going to come in about 25 years? And I did give a hint, the method. What did he do to figure that out?
Is it about the times?
No. Probably involved. How did he calculate the time?
He used it as a measure of time. From what I remember. I don't quite remember it clearly, so.
So if you go to Daniel 8:14, and it says under 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Why did he take that to 1844? How did he do that? 2,300 days. How did he take that to 1844?
Was it a day for a year?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, perfect.
how he figured it.
Yeah, good job, Jackie.
Yeah, I remember. That was probably the only thing I remembered.
We're being tested every day and we're going to get this down.
It's back though when we start talking about it again.
So he uses the day equals a year principle, right? Which is in Numbers, and I think it's somewhere else as well. I've numbered each day for a year. So he uses that principle of a day equals a year and taking the 2,300 days and discovers and finds the dates and puts it together and realizes that Christ is going to come in about 25 years. Okay, so after that, who comes along after that in this history? Who gives us this information?
Litch?
Litch.
Josiah Litch.
Okay, so walk us through, how does Josiah Litch get to this date?
Well, he used the same method that William Miller used, day for a year principle. And the woes, he figured out he calculated through the woes. And 150 years and I don't remember when the 150 years began. And then the four,
Are you still there, or did you just stop? Are you thinking?
yeah, no, like I said, I don't, I know it's 151, I think it's 491
391
or 391.
and 15 days.
And so, yeah, 15 days. So, but I can't remember when it started for
Okay,
his calculation.
okay. Anybody else? So he's giving the, Phil, you're right there. So I know if anybody else has any more to add to that. So Josiah Litch uses Revelation 9. And basically for the second woe, and the second woe was the hour, the day, the month, and the year, right? So he takes a year, and that's 360 days of Bible, a prophetic Bible, or prophetic year, Bible year. A year in Bible prophecy is 360 days. So he takes the year, it's 360 days. He takes the month, which is 30 days, and he takes the day, which is a day, and then he takes the hour, which is 15 hours. And so you add that up and you have 391 years and 15 days. And he goes back and he's, I don't know if it was him that came up with studying the woes, if those dates were already established, but was 1249 July, I think it was 1249 to July 1449, I believe it was 1299 to 1449 or 1449, I think it is. If I'm wrong on any of those, help me out, so that then I might have some of them backwards and have them wrong. That was 150 years, I think is what I was giving. That was 150 years. So then he goes from that 1449 date and calculates out the 391 years and 15 days. So in 1838, I probably totally messed that up. I better make sure that we say that straight so that you guys we all follow it. So the first woe is what I was giving first, the 1299 to 1449, I believe it is, 150 years. And then he calculates, and I'm pretty sure it was July, I don't remember the date, but it was July. You count back 15 days, you'll know what it was. So he takes the 1449 date, July 1449 date, and calculates 391 years and 15 days. And so in 1838, he predicts that sometime in August that the Ottoman Empire would fall. And then I think it's on August 1st or so that then he predicts that it's going to be August 11th. Okay, so what methodology is he using?
A day for a year.
A day for a year. So when Ellen White then says that a wonderful impetus was given to the work, what was just confirmed here?
The
Day for a year
methodology.
methodology.
Right, the methodology. Okay, so then when you come down to 1989, go ahead.
What you just said, it's not on the 1843 chart, that 315, what is it, 300, what's it in 15 days?
Yeah, 391 years and 15 days. It's
Yeah, that's not on the chart.
it's Revelation 9.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me to look at it, but it's Revelation 9. It may not say it that way, but Revelation 9 is there, I think. I don't have it in front of me to look at it. But it's in Revelation 9. I can't remember which verse it is. Maybe somebody has the verse pulled up, that it's where it talks about the hour, the day, the month, and the year. And that's what he put together to then put it into a day equals a year. in Bible prophecy. So he used the methodology that William Miller of the day equals year in prophecy, and that actually comes from the Bible. So he used that methodology that then predicted this date. And then Ellen White says it happened in exactly the date. And that then there was a wonderful impetus, or as we said before, it was the message was empowered. So you have a methodology that is a message that is opened up, and a methodology now to study the Bible with. And that methodology is used by Josiah Litch, and the prophecy that he predicts happens right on time, which gives an impetus or empowers the message. And this message involves the Ottoman Empire, which is who?
The Turks.
Islam. So Islam was restrained on August 11th, 1840. And this confirmed the methodology. Okay. So you come to our line here, and a message of the reform lines, or a message of line upon line, prophetic timelines. The booklet was called Prophetic Timelines, opens up. And these timelines, this is a methodology that opens up that is going to be now guide the movement. And that methodology is line upon line. So there are probably other evidences, and we'll see them as we go through this next study. But as we go through it to try to master each one of them. But you have Islam restrained here. And then we're looking back, we're in here, and we're looking back, Islam has happened. And what, so, how do I say, because I'm kind of leaving out the part that this was the woe where the king of the north, it's the I'm drawing a blank to how to say this right, because the Islam was to be it was a false religion. Uriah Smith says false religion to be a scourge on an apostate church. So you have the papacy. I might be mixing things up, so give me just a second to think it through. So yeah, I think I'm mixing that part up. So that's another part to add to it. So you see Islam restrained here as well. I know what I want to say, because the woes are an attack. That's what I wanted to say. The woes are an attack on the army of the papacy. Okay. So when you had the first 4 trumpets, they were attacking pagan Rome, and the 5th and 6th trumpet in Revelation 9 are the attack on papal Rome, or the army of papal Rome. So at 9/11, you see a strike by Islam attacking the army of Rome, the papacy. Did that make sense? I hope did I mix anybody up in there?
Yeah, no, what
No,
you said
that
was
was good.
correct.
Okay. So there's an attack on the army of Rome at 9/11, and then on November 9 of 2001, you see a restraint of Islam. So we're looking back and see this. So what happens here? You have line upon line. Now you see this restraint of Islam happens here. So what do we see happen? What does this mean for us here at 9/11?
The empowerment.
The empowerment. And what did the empowerment up here do?
Up where?
In August 11th, 1840. The empowerment was, what did the empowerment do? What
Gave the impetus.
impetus? Yes. And confirming what?
Confirming the methodology.
Confirming the
The
methodology.
methodology.
Right. So you have line upon line, right? So you have line upon line is the methodology. You have a day equals a year in Bible prophecy. There's a prophecy fulfilled right on time, which confirms the methodology. And now you have a restraint of Islam, and now you have a restraint of Islam, and it's on this line. And so it's confirming line upon line. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And there may be better ways to do that than what I just did, probably is, but it confirms the methodology of line upon line. So remember, though, that as we go on this journey, there's still a lot to unpack along the way. So this particular study is to go through and look at all the events that happened at 9/11, that confirm us on 9/11. Okay, so we're going to skip the rest of this, and we'll let, because Christine and Francisco were not here for that, but we're going to skip that. You do have the notes to go through it, and opening up the document doesn't help. Sharing the document does. Okay, so you can see it now. You can see the next one right now, right?
Yes.
Part
we can
two?
see part
Okay.
2. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we're going to see another event. We're going to go through the other event. We basically just talked about it, so it ought to be easier for us. We basically just talked about the first and second angels' messages here. In our last article, we saw how one could parallel the events of September 11, 2001 with the events of October 11th, 1840, and place the commencement of the third woe at 9/11. Therefore, if you were to construct the line of the 144,000 by comparing it to the Millerite line, you now have one witness that 9/11 can be placed as the second waymark. So you have one witness that 9/11 can be placed at the second waymark. By relooking at August 11th, 1840, we'll try to show how the first angel's message was empowered, and we basically just covered that. So now we're going to get more details on it, more to support for our minds, how the first angel's message was empowered and how that also finds its parallel at 9/11. Then by looking at the Omega, or the end of ancient Israel, this will attempt to show that on 9/11, the second angel's message arrived for the 144,000, all of which is further evidence that 9/11 can be correctly placed as our second waymark. Because remember that Ellen White, I'm going to switch back and forth maybe a couple of times here, but he's going to talk about this one, or yeah, I don't know if he is, but I am real quick. Ellen White gives us the Sunday law, close of probation, second advent. In their history, she gives us the time of the end. This is a great controversy. Great controversy she gives us the time of the end, 1798. We get 1844 from the great controversy as well, Daniel 8:13, the 2300 days, and that evidence. So in the great controversy, you're given this line here. That the structure that she gives us, 1798, 1844, Sunday law, close of probation, and second advent. Okay, so she gives us that. So when we come down to the line of the 144,000, we have Sunday law, Daniel 12:1, and then second advent, but we don't have these. So that's what we're looking at, is how to defend these waymarks. So we have our first evidence of this paralleling 9/11, paralleling August 11th, 1840. There's an empowerment of the first angel. There's an empowerment of the first angel. Okay.
Can we also bring in that happens in a gathering time because of the 5 waymarks?
Yeah, but not in this particular one just yet, because that gathering actually began in 1989. Right?
Yeah, and same as in the Millerite line. That was a gathering period
Yes, it was a gathering period.
where she gave the template.
From 1798. Yeah, it was gathering. So from 1798, therefore from 1989, it's a gathering time. Yeah. Okay, so then by looking at the Omega, or the end of ancient Israel, this paper will attempt to show that on 9/11, the second angel's message arrived for the 144,000. So you have the empowerment of the first, and this will show that the second angel's message arrived for the 144,000, which is further evidence that 9/11 can be correctly placed as our second waymark. By further comparing the second waymark from the end of ancient Israel, we'll attempt to show God entered into covenant with his people, and the leadership of the Seventh-day Adventist Church was passed by, and exactly what this means. So we see that we're going to see that the first angel's message is empowered. The arrival of the second angel's message using the Omega of ancient Israel to line that up. So you take each of those various lines that we were looking at and take characteristics of the second waymark of each of those lines. And so we're going to be looking at the second waymark of the omega of ancient Israel to give us the second waymark for the 144,000. Okay, so the empowerment, the first angel's message arrived 1798. Since 1798, the book of Daniel has been unsealed. Knowledge of the prophecies has increased, and many have proclaimed the solemn message of the judgment near. Now it's Great Controversy 356, paragraph 2. The unsealing of the book of Daniel involved a prediction based on time setting. The unsealing of the little book was the message in relation to time. So in its most basic sense, the first angel's message taught that using a day for a year methodology, one could predict the hour of his judgment. Therefore, when Josiah Litch's prediction using Miller's day for a year methodology came true, the first angel's message was empowered or proven to be true, and a wonderful impetus was given to the Advent movement. When a message is rapidly and widely accepted, often because a prophecy or a prediction has come true, we say that the message was empowered. Litch's prediction confirmed that Miller's day for a year methodology was true and correct, therefore could be trusted in application to Daniel 8:13. So on August 11th, 1840, the first angel's message was empowered, and we have already seen that this waymark parallels 9/11. So their second waymark in the Millerite history parallels 9/11. Just as Miller's day for a year methodology was confirmed on August 11th, 1840, our methodology of line upon line, the repeating of history, was confirmed at 9/11. So, so that confirms line upon line because you see history being repeated. In 1989, the unsealing for this movement began. Line upon line methodology, or the repeat of history, began to be studied, and a booklet called Prophetic Timelines was authored. In this respect, the comparing and contrasting of historic reform lines with our time was our first angel's message. But how did we really know it could be relied upon when at that time it was largely theoretical? For a theory to be confirmed as true, it has to be tried and tested. Thus, at 9/11, we witnessed the repeat of the first and second woes. The line upon line parable methodology was confirmed to be true. Hence, our first angel's message was empowered at 9/11. Okay, so Revelation 10, the empowerment of the first angel's message is prophesied in Revelation 10. We've seen how the second woe repeats when Islamic powers were restrained, beginning with the Battle of Mazar-e-Sharif in Afghanistan. And this is the date we already talked about as well. These are just the details on it. November 9, 2001. Beginning with the Battle of Mazar-e-Sharif in Afghanistan, November 9, 2001. So let us see how Revelation 10 depicts the empowerment of the first angel's message at the conclusion of the second woe. In scripture, when an angel is empowered, we see that angel come down from heaven to earth and cry with a loud voice. A good example of a message being empowered is in Revelation 18. In Revelation 18:1, we see the second angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. Ellen White tells us that this is the fulfillment of the prediction of the second angel of Revelation 14:18. So it's the fulfillment of the prediction of the second angel. And we said, when a prediction of prophecy comes true, it's empowered. So 18:1, we see the second angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And that's a fulfillment of the second angel of Revelation 14:8. Not yet, however, can it be said that Babylon is fallen, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. off-topic question. What's the wine of Babylon? I think we talked about it. What's the wine of Babylon today?
Inequality?
Equality. Equality. So, so she's made all nations drink the wine of the wrath of her fornication. She has not yet made all nations to do this. The work of apostasy has not yet reached its culmination. Revelation 18 points to the time when, as the result of rejecting the threefold warning of Revelation 14, 6-12, the church will have fully reached the condition foretold by the second angel. So this great power, Revelation 18.
Can you,
Go ahead.
sorry, can you explain that answer for the wine of Babylon being equality?
Being equality? Oh, excuse me.
Why would that, for some reason that just went over my head.
Shouldn't it be inequality?
Yeah, inequality. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm glad Phil said the same
Thank
thing I do.
you.
Phil said the same thing I do, and I got to remember to say that correctly. Inequality.
It got me confused, but now I'm glad. Okay, good. So we're straight. Inequality is their message, right?
Yeah, Phil,
That's
did
the
you
wine of
say-
Babylon.
Yeah, Phil, if you said inequality, I apologize. Did you say inequality?
Yes, yeah, inequality.
Okay, so blame it on me,
wouldn't it be-
myself. Sorry.
Is it like freedom over equality kind of thing?
Well,
That's libertarianism.
Yeah,
um,
but it's inequality.
inequality, yeah. And it goes back to what is our test. Our test is equality. That's why I always say it backwards. Our test is equality. So the wine of Babylon is inequality. When you go back and you look at the sin in 1863, it was slavery. What does slavery represent?
Oppression, inequality.
Inequality, right? And it's inequality, racism, racism, nationalism, sexism, and homophobia. So it's inequality. And our test is equality. So the wine of Babylon, what they've all been drinking is inequality. That makes sense?
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I had just heard equality, and then I was like, no, somebody has to explain that one to me. Okay, but that's perfect what you just said.
And I'm sorry, Phil, I thought I heard you say equality, but I thought I'd go back and ask just in case I heard you wrong. So I'm sorry I blamed you.
No worries. It could have been, because that unmute mute button could have hidden it also.
So, okay, so inequality is that wine. Okay, so this great power that lightens the earth, the 18:1, is what we call the empowerment. Thus, when an angel lands on the earth, it signifies his message is empowered. Hence, it is given with a strong voice. 18:2. So in Revelation 14:6, we see the first angel flying in the midst of heaven. And in verse 8, we are told the second angel followed, thus also flying in the midst of heaven. So you have the first flying in the midst of heaven, you have the second flying in the midst of heaven. Verse 9 says the same of the third angel in the midst of heaven. If we apply this principle to the first angel's message, it is flying in the midst of heaven in Revelation 14:6, but we actually see it landing on earth and therefore empowered in Revelation 10:1-2. So it's on earth. Let's see. So we see it landing on earth, and so it's empowered in Revelation 10:1-2. So both angels come down from heaven, 10:1 and 18:1, set his foot upon the sea and his right foot upon the sea and his left foot upon the earth, that's 10:2, or lighten the earth with his glory, Revelation 18:1, and cry with a loud voice, Revelation 10:3, or a strong voice, Revelation 18:2. So bringing the passages all together. And all of this language describes the empowerment of their respective messages. So you see the first angel, the messages in Revelation 14 are flying in the midst of heaven, but in 10:1, you see it with his right foot on the sea and left foot on the earth. So there's an empowerment to the angel, and then lighten the earth with his glory, and a cry with a loud voice, 10:3, 18:1, and a strong voice, Revelation 18:2. And all of this is describing the empowerment of their respective messages. So Ellen White says Revelation 10 is a prophecy of the first and second angels' messages. The special light given to John, which was expressed in the seven thunders, was a delineation of events which would transpire under the first and second angels' messages. We know Revelation 10 is not the empowerment of the second angel's message, as she says Revelation 18 is fulfilled at the Sunday law. That's Great Controversy 603, paragraph 1 and 2. So when she mentions the second angel's message above, she is referring to its arrival. Therefore, this empowerment described in Revelation 10 is the empowerment of the first angel's message, which we have now seen occurred on August 11th, 1840, and how that parallels the empowerment of the first angel's message at 9/11. So it's an empowerment of the first angel's message, not the second. So to conclude, when an angel is flying in the midst of heaven, it represents that angel's message arriving. Landing on earth represents that angel's message being empowered. Everybody okay with that principle?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the arrival now, so that takes care of the empowerment of the first angel's message. Now we're looking at the arrival of the second angel's message. Each reform line has 5 waymarks, the 5 fingers we were talking about, which has been likened to the hand of God and his people in Ezekiel 20:34, or the hand of Daniel 5:5. At Belshazzar's feast, the bloodless hand writes a symbol of the 126 or 2520 on the wall, both of which represent the scattering and gathering. By the way, the fall of Babylon, pronounced at Belshazzar's feast, represents the second angel's message. Babylon is fallen. That's the second message. Babylon is fallen. So it is no coincidence that the doctrines of the 2520 and the 126 were introduced to this movement after 9/11, the arrival of the second angel's message. So the arrival of the second angel's message is 9/11, and then you have following that the 2520 and the 126, Babylon is fallen. So the first 3 waymarks of any reform line are the first, second, and third angel's messages, without distinguishing the arrival from the empowerment. So the first 3 waymarks are the first, second, and third angel's messages, without distinguishing the arrival from the empowerment, just first, second, third. And the last 2 represent the close of probation, which marks the close of all messages, and the second advent for each line. So the first 3 waymarks are the first, second, and third angel's messages. And the 4th waymark is the close of probation and the closing of the messages. And then the 5th waymark is the second advent. If we refer to the diagram of
Can you
go ahead.
Can you explain, somehow I don't know, maybe just because my brain fuzzes out every now and then. Back where you were,
Yeah.
where it says, so it is no coincidence that the doctrines of the 2520 and the 126 were introduced to this movement after 9/11. What did I miss? Can you see somebody can just say it?
I'm going to pull this up again. Here we are on our line, right? You've got the first 3 waymarks, okay, represent the first, second, and third without the distinction of the arrival versus empowerment. He's just saying that this is the first, second, and third, but it's not distinguishing between arrival or empowerment, okay? And then 9/11, he is saying we've established that as the second waymark. 9/11, he is saying that in this period of time, the 2520 and the 126 open up. Let me go back to that too.
But why?
Let me just.
But he compares it to ugh.
Within the second angel.
I just went blank.
Within the second angel's message. And I'll switch back and forth, but I'm reading it real quick right now. So he says that, so it's no coincidence that the doctrines of the 2520 and the 126 were introduced to this movement after 9/11. 9/11 in parentheses, which 9/11 is the arrival of the second angel's message. So we see that, and actually, I know how to do this, don't I? To where we can just, so I can go back and forth and not have to unshare. Yeah, okay. You can see the study that we're on, right? So it's no coincidence, you see that?
Now I do.
Okay, I think I can go back and forth. I think I know how to do this. Okay, so it's no coincidence that the doctrines of the 2520 and the 126 were introduced to this movement. So what did he just tell us? He's talking about Belshazzar's feast, the bloodless hand, right? The bloodless hand writes the symbol of the 126 and the 2520.
Yes.
Right? So it's the hand of God.
I get that.
Okay, so it's the hand of God
Yes.
that's writing this. And what is what he's saying is that the fall of Babylon pronounced at Belshazzar's feast represents the second angel's message. So when this arrives, when the hand arrives and writes this, it's the fall of Babylon, and the fall of Babylon is the second angel's message. Okay.
Yeah, okay, I get that part. But
Okay.
what does the gathering have to do with Belshazzar's feast?
But we're not bringing
What
together.
does the gathering, because it says they both of which represent the scattering and gathering.
Did I miss that part, or are you bringing that in? Oh yeah, right here. Okay, let me go back in here. Both of which represent the scattering and the gathering. The 2520 and the 126 represent the scattering and the gathering. Symbol.
126 is a gathering, right? And
Yeah,
and the 2520 is a scattering, or
Yes, the scattering and the gathering. Yes, the scattering and the gathering. You have a and so the 126 and the 2520 represent the scattering and the gathering.
so each represents both.
I think the 20, I may say this wrong, so don't quote me on it, but the 2520 is what taught us about scatterings and gatherings, because they were scattered. But if you're scattered, you're then going to be what?
Gathered. Okay.
Gathered.
It's coming clear. Sometimes when you read so quickly, you know,
Yeah, sorry.
no, just for me, I had a hard time. I'm sorry if I held anybody else up because of my slowness.
No, you're not holding anybody else up, because we needed I needed as well to make sure that we all get it, myself included. So the 126 and the 2520, the 126 is a symbol of the 2520. So together they represent the scattering and the gathering. So if that makes sense, the 126, the 151, they're all symbols of the 2520. So when you see 2520 or you see 126, they can be interchangeable to teach us things, if I'm saying that correctly.
Yes.
Well, the 2520 represents the scattering and the gathering. Okay. So
It's all clear now.
okay.
It's all clear. Thank you.
Yeah. So it represents the scattering and the gathering. And actually I read it so fast that I didn't realize I read scattering and gathering into myself. So I appreciate you bringing that question up. So we're all trying to get this to where we can have it in our heads to understand it, see it, and be able to fluently teach it, myself included. So the 126 and the 2520 is written by the hand of God, representing the scattering and the gathering. And it's also the when it's pronounced, that's Babylon's or Belshazzar's feast is pronouncing, and it's Babylon is fallen. Babylon is fallen, we know, is the second angel's message. So at the second angel's message, we also are going to see the 2520 and the 126 introduced after 9/11. Does that make sense? So you go back to Daniel 5 and Belshazzar's feast, and Babylon is fallen is proclaimed, which is the second angel's message. And you have the 2520 introduced after 9/11. So you have the arrival of the second angel, and then you have the 2520 open up. Everybody okay on that now too? Because I know I messed
Yeah, it's very clear. It's very clear now.
up. Okay. Was somebody else going to say
Thank
something?
you.
Uh-huh.
Well, also isn't Elder Parmender's considered the second angel, right?
Mhm.
And he doesn't come into this message until like 2005. So it couldn't have come in before 2001 because he doesn't come into the message until like 2005, something like that.
Yeah, and if you look at 1980 or you look at 1798, you know, William Miller's not even studying the Bible yet. When you go back to 4 BC, the time of the end, you have the birth of John the Baptist and the birth of Christ, right? It's the arrival, but it's
Right, but he's not going to start talking about the message until after he's like in the movie.
right. So you have when the second angel comes, and just like I know somebody has mentioned this recently, but that even Elder Tess was born on November 9, 1989. Is that correct?
Yeah, Elder Tess
Yeah, and
was born-
Parmenter was baptized in 1989 into the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Yep.
Christine, were you going to say something too?
I was going to say the same thing.
Okay. So you can put them all there.
All
And,
three of them at 1989.
yeah. And so the message was going to then be unpacked along the way. Okay. So if we're all clear there, then that's the Babylon is fallen is the message here, which is the second angel's message. And then after that, you get the 2520 and the 126 being introduced during that time. And let's see, so the first three waymarks, we just covered that. So if we refer to the diagram of the lines in the previous article, and we'll flip back there, one can see that 27 AD and the baptism of Christ parallels 9/11. So how easily can I do this? Did it switch for you guys? Can you see the lines now?
Yes.
Okay.
I
Yes.
can.
Okay, good. So I'll be able to go back and forth. So we have 27 AD here lining up with, so we're just going back through these reform lines, right? Back through the reform lines. So we have shown that this is the empowerment using the reform line the empowerment, which confirms the methodology. You have the restraint of Islam and you have the restraint of Islam. We mark that. We're looking at, so now we officially put this as the second waymark. 9/11 is the second waymark, and now we're showing Babylon is fallen, and we're going to line that and showing briefly, but we didn't go into details, but the arrival of the 126, that's just an added note there in the 2520. Now we're looking at the baptism. So when you line up all your lines, we're looking at the baptism here. Okay. So you have, while John the Baptist was the first messenger bringing the first angel's message, Christ was the second messenger who brought the second angel's message. His baptism was when he was anointed the Christ and was declared fit for service, so to speak. This is when his ministry began, hence the second angel, Christ, arrived on the prophetic scene as the prophetic actor. While he had been on earth for 30 years prior to his baptism, he had not started his prophetic role to confirm the covenant with many, foretold in Daniel 9:27. Furthermore, at his baptism, the Father confirms this as the Christ, Matthew 3:16-17, thereby empowering John's message. So there's a confirming there, right? You have a confirming there by God that that this is the Christ. And so it's empowering John's message to proclaim the first advent of Jesus. And that's Early Writings 155:1. And I know I said father here, please forgive me. I'm trying to remove the sisters and fathers from my mind. So So God confirms that this is the Christ. So and you have an empowerment and you have an arrival. Here again, we see the fulfillment of a prophecy, Daniel 9:27. See Desire of Ages 232 to 233. And in recognition of this, the rapid acceptance of the message. So by comparing the second waymark from the end of ancient Israel with 9/11, we find further evidence that the first angel's message is empowered and the second angel's message arrives. So we have the baptism here, the arrival of the second angel's message, telling us here that it's representing baptism here and the arrival of the second angel's message. And then a power goes with the message. And more people are, what did it say? To proclaim the first advent and in recognition, a rapid acceptance of the message. So now we're going on to God entering into a covenant with his church. On the testimony of two witnesses, we've seen how God confirms the message of the first angel to be true when he proclaims that this is the Christ, and corrected at the second waymark. Lich's prediction came true, and God confirmed that Christ was the coming Messiah that John had predicted. So you had a prediction that John makes, and God himself confirms that prediction. No human being could have fabricated the fall of the Ottoman Empire on the exact day, nor a voice from heaven and a dove descending upon Christ. Yet God does not waste his efforts. And the reason he confirms the message and methodology at the second waymark demands investigation. So to understand the reason for confirming the message and methodology at the second waymark, those who rejected the first message could not be benefited by the second. Neither were they benefited by the midnight cry, which was to prepare them to enter with Jesus by faith into the most holy place of the heavenly sanctuary. And by rejecting the two former messages, the first and second, they have so darkened their understanding that they can see no light in the third angel's message, which shows the way into the most holy place. So you have God confirming the message in each of these. The message and the methodology gets confirmed in each. John's prediction is confirmed by God, and you have the confirmation here of the methodology as well. You have the confirmation here as well of line upon line. And now you're going to see a growth in the message. But if you reject this message, you're not benefited by this message, and you're not able to see the midnight cry and then the message that would take us into the most holy place, So once God has confirmed that message and methodology of the movement is true and correct, God's people have no excuse to reject it. If you saw Lich's prediction come true, or you witnessed the dove and the voice from heaven, but still rejected the message or the messenger, you will have so darkened your understanding that you can see no light in the third angel's message. What is more, if you actually believe the first and second angel's messages and still go on to reject the movement, you are equally guilty. You have no legal right to leave the movement of God once you accept the doctrine of 9/11. He's confirmed the methodology. He's proven the methodology. And yet in every shaking we have seen people leave the movement who have heard the voice of God from heaven at 9/11 and even claim to still hold it, but engage in a futile attempt to go back and try to rewrite our history and its doctrines. It is akin to saying, I believe Jesus is the Messiah. Go ahead.
Sorry. You know, I was, well, I'm studying with Aaron, and this came up, you know, this part here about, except if you accept 9/11, then you can't leave. You can't leave the movement. And we were talking about how when Tess came in and she brought the message in, the midnight cry message, and she had to stand in front of those heavy hitters. She had to stand in front of Jeff and Dewey and everybody that was really watching her, like a hawk. And anyhow, many of them, practically all of them, I guess, have left. And a few, like a couple years back when they first fell out, I would look for them. Remember, Dewey started his own. He started like his own. I'm trying to remember the girl too that was always arguing in the background. I can't remember her name right now. You probably do, Elaine.
Tanya.
Yeah, Tanya. Anyway, I kind of would look for them, and they just disappear. They just fizzle into like nothing. They have no message. Nothing. Remember Kelly Ross? Like he just recently, like, an email popped up, right? And it was just like one of those stupid email messages that we got when we were back watching Walter Veith or whatever, and thought maybe it was something. I mean, it's just really sad. They just go into darkness.
Yeah. And that's what this is saying here, that the light, for those of us that are in the movement and get the midnight cry, if you reject the midnight cry, all the light behind you goes out. All the light behind you goes out. And the light
It's
becomes
true.
darkness. So it's a scary thing. It's a scary thing. So no legal right to leave the movement of God once you accept the doctrine of 9/11. So accepting the doctrine, it doesn't mean you were back there, but we come into the movement, we accept the doctrine of 9/11. And what we want to do is better understand it, because I don't know that we all really fully understand all the evidence that points to 9/11. So we've accepted a lot by faith, but we also have to be able to teach it. So, but all of this light goes out all the way back. So anyway, so once you accept the doctrine of 9/11, and yet in every shaking we have seen, people that have departed, they heard the voice of God from heaven at 9/11, and even claim to still hold to it, but engage in futile attempt to go back and try to rewrite our history and its doctrines. It's akin to saying, I believe Jesus is the Messiah, but I don't believe what he teaches from a certain point in time. To say it plainly, when confronted with the doctrine of 9/11, God expects you to come aboard and stay aboard, having given ample evidence for you to do so. He expects you to enter into covenant with him, just as baptism is represented as at this second waymark by 27 AD. The very act of baptism represents the entering into covenant with God. And we saw 27 AD is the baptism of Christ, and that's where God says this is the Christ and confirms it. So this waymark and its corresponding doctrine represents when the movement, the 144,000, entered into covenant with God. So we may not have been here at that time, but we do so by understanding. Okay, so this section is going to be on the leaders being passed by. This will be a nice review because I think some of us, perhaps myself included, have some a little bit of wrong understandings on some of this information. So let's just go through this. So furthermore, when the Jews were being baptized into the new church, it meant that the previous church, and I understand it, the leaders were passed by then in the ancient history, but some of the details of current history I want to have be freshened on. So furthermore, when the Jews were being baptized into this new church, it meant that the previous church was being passed by. So you have a covenant, you enter into a covenant with God, it's the establishing of a new church. And it meant that the previous church was being passed by. One is baptized into a church, an organized church, and not just a set of doctrines or beliefs. If Jesus was calling Jews into this new Christian church, which church was he calling them out of? Obviously, it was the Jewish church led by the Pharisees. These then were being passed by as leaders. They were no longer the leaders of God's flock, and his flock was being called into the new church led by Jesus. Hence, at 9/11, God has passed by the leaders of his former church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and entered into a covenant with his new church, calling them out of the former. So calling them out of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and he's establishing a new church. So this was waymarked by the obligatory study of spiritual formation. That's the thing that I had a question on. So yeah, so the spiritual formation for all employees of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, obligatory study of spiritual formation. Both the church and the world were judged at the same time, when it can be declared Babylon is fallen. While we understand the Seventh-day Adventist Church is not Babylon, as it is Laodicea, the call to come out of her still applies here. A study of the seven churches of Revelation 2 and 3 shows how God expects you to identify and respond to the one church pertaining to the dispensation in which you live. This is definitely not saying the leaders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church are all lost, or their probation is closed, or any such thing. It simply means they are not able to lead God's flock any longer, simply because they have not learned the truths of the first and second angels' messages for our timeline. But like Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus, individually, they can join God's last day remnant church until that door is shut when the mark of the beast law is passed. In the line of the end of ancient Israel, we actually see that this process began at the birth of Christ in 4 BC. While the angels attempted to stir the Jewish leaders to recognize the birth of the Messiah, they did not answer the call, so the call went to the shepherds and the wise men. Please do not lose the significance of the symbology. God was calling new shepherds to lead his flock now. And they not only had to be shepherds or leaders, but wise rather than foolish. So the conclusion. We've now covered the first 4 topics listed in our first part of this series. In this article, we saw 2 further pieces of evidence that 9/11 can be placed at our second waymark, namely that the first angel is empowered here, paralleling August 11th, 1840, and the voice from heaven with the dove at the baptism of Christ. We also saw how the second angel arrives from 9/11 in the message of the 2520, which parallels the arrival of Christ's ministry at his baptism. We also saw how at this point the message and methodology is confirmed, and as a result, God expects us to commit to the movement and enter into covenant with him, represented by the baptism of Christ. In doing so, one cannot stay in the former church, hence the leadership of the Seventh-day Adventist Church was passed by as now unfit for service, as they cannot teach the messages that lead their flock through the third angel's message and into the most holy place. Now that we understand the second angel's message arrived for the line of the 144,000 at 9/11, in the next article, we'll try to understand the relationship the latter rain, judgment of the living, and the sealing of 144,000 has with 9/11. So that's not the page I meant to show you.
Very clear. Very clear how he's written this.
Yeah. So clear that I'm going to ask you to do a little.
Wow, don't do that to me.
Yeah.
Don't do that to me.
I'll ask somebody if anybody wants to do it. That's what we want to be doing, is doing a repeating of what we're studying each night. Somebody wants to kind of repeat back a summary, and that's going to help it stick in our minds. So how do
Turn off the recorder.
It's okay. It's okay. We'll be okay.
Man, it'll be the agony of defeat. You remember that in the Wide World of Sports,
Yeah.
the skier that goes down the slope and falls, and they show that it week after week after week. When you put it on the recording, it's like you have to watch yourself fail over and over again.
Oh, so we can do that if you want, if you feel more comfortable. We can see if anybody else wants to do a review, but that's what we're working towards doing is a review each time and having somebody kind of do a summarize it back, a conclusion. I gave the conclusion, but I want somebody else to try to summarize what we've done thus far. So if you want to go for it, Susan, go ahead. And if somebody else wants to, go ahead.
I'll pass. I'm not good at this yet.
Okay. Anybody else?
So are you asking to summarize everything that we discussed thus far? That's a lot.
At least if you can touch on the first, the third woe. If not, then just the first and second angel's message. I think you could probably touch on the first woe pretty easier, maybe.
So the first woe, second woe, third woe, fifth, sixth, and seventh trumpet. The woes have to do with Islam. So the first woe happened back in Abu Bakr's time, which was, I think, 606, which is the 150 years. The second woe was the 391 days and 391 years and 15 days. And that's the one that Josiah Litch used to confirm the year-to-date principle to come up with a date of Islam being restrained, August 11th, 1840. So that's how we get our, well, I think that's one way we get our second waymark of 9/11, which is on November 9th, 2001. Islam was restrained, and that was the beginning of the third woe. Although that was the beginning of the third woe, the attack on 9/11 only hurt.
Good point. Thank you for remembering that one.
Yeah, only hurt the army of Rome, which is the United States. So it didn't bring it down. The bringing down of the army of Rome, which is the United States, will come after the Sunday Law. So that's the first. That's the summary of the first, second, and third woe. How we got to that. Let's see what else.
So what did that represent when it came to the angels?
Well, so the first angel brought the message, and then when the second angel came, it empowered the message of the first angel. So the first angel was John the Baptist, and Jesus was the second angel. So it was so John's messages was confirmed when Jesus was baptized. Likewise, the first angel for our time period was Elder Pippinger, and his methodology was line upon line. And I should probably start with a Miller. Okay, so let me go back. Okay, so we talked about John and Jesus, first and second angel. So the first angel was William Miller, who, using the day for a year principle, predicted that he studied the 2300-day prophecy and predicted that in 1843, Jesus would return. using the day for a year principle. So taking that, the second angel, Josiah Litch, second angel, Josiah Litch, proved the day to year principle by predicting and using and predicting the day for year principle for the restraining of the Ottoman Empire in August 11, 1840, which came true just as he predicted. So that's the first and second angels for the Millerite time. And then for our time, as I was saying, Elder Pippinger, the methodology was line upon line. And our second angel, who is Elder Parminder, by using the 2520 methodology. I'm getting a little confused here.
That's okay, because he's really not on the scene yet there anyways. It's just,
Okay.
it's just confirming the
line upon line, parable methodology.
which is empowering the first angel.
First angel.
But from the time of Christ, it also represents, I don't think you said this one, what else does it represent? 27 AD, what happened in 27 AD?
The baptism.
The baptism. And the baptism represents what?
The baptism represents the confirmation of the first angel.
Yeah, and there's one other thing I'm looking for. The baptism represents
Empowerment.
we did empowerment. You're good. We did empowerment. The very last thing we talked about in the last one, what happened in the Seventh-day Advent?
Impetus.
No, what happened in ancient Israel? In ancient Israel, Christ is baptized, right? God says
the leaders were bypassed.
the leaders are bypassed. So if the leaders are bypassed, what is he doing? What is God doing if the leaders are bypassed?
Raising up a new leader,
Raising
new church,
new leader. And so what begins when he's raising up this new leadership? What also does that then represent? What are we personally doing when we accept this message?
coming out of the old
Entering
and into the new movement.
The gathering time,
Covenant.
covenant.
Yeah, the covenant. Because gathering began in 1989. But you start with the plowing and all of that. So when you go through the line of agricultural model. So yeah, so you're entering into a covenant. Susan, I'm gonna call you on it next time.
No, I can't do what Fel did you did a really awesome job, Fel. I can't lay it all out. I can give you a few answers still, but I'm not good at laying it all out yet. But thank you for your clear review, Fel.
One is glad to be of service. Something to help everybody out. If you have not yet listened to Aaron, he has about a 17-minute, it's a short video. Aaron has a 17-minute video on how to present.
Oh yeah, Susan just mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, so if you haven't watched it yet, if you haven't watched it yet, go ahead and watch that a couple of times. I watched it a couple of times. And he lays a 10 points, 10 bullet points on how to present. And it's this is what he uses. So it's short and very informative. And so, we as a family here, we should not be afraid of making mistakes, because when one says something, we can only say up to a certain point. It might spark more knowledge from somebody else who can pick up from where the first person left off. So we need to keep practicing, because this is our practice before we have to teach. So don't be afraid.
Right.
to make mistakes.
Amen.
Yeah.
You know, you just made me smile so big, Fel, because you know how God illustrates the end from the beginning. When we opened before you joined us, I opened with what you just shared about Aaron at the very beginning of this video. And now at the end of our conclusion, as we're finishing up this session, you brought that in again. So it was like God is really trying to get us to pay attention to those points that Aaron brought out. And he's learned a lot by trial and error. You know, he's a really good teacher. I really appreciate him. So.
Okay, so
I wanted to say something on what Fel said, like, you know, how Jesus confirmed what John the Baptist said, and then, and how, was it not Lich, but, yeah, was Lich confirmed what Miller was saying? Didn't Elder Perminder confirm the lines by doing the 126 and calculating backwards the 1989 as a second witness? So he confirmed that.
yes, this is not, he's not there yet. I mean, the second angel is there, and we're going to look at all these other evidences, but the 2520 still comes a little bit later on the line. But yes, it is a confirmation. The confirmation of it being is the confirmation of the line upon line is the repeating of the restraint of Islam. But you're going to have more added to it when the 2520 comes in as well. I hope I said that right. I make mistakes too. So, so you have the confirmation of line upon line when you see the repeating of history. But you're also going to see, then you see the baptism, right? When you look at the second way mark on the end of ancient Israel, you see the baptism there at the second way mark. So you carry that down. We already have established 9/11 by the repeating of a history line upon line. Now you start taking the second way mark from different lines and putting those characteristics in there. So when you go to the end of ancient Israel, you see the baptism of Christ. You see that God confirms by saying that he is the Christ. You see that the leadership has passed by, and you see the starting of a new church. You see him entering into covenant now with his people. So you bring all those characteristics down to 9/11. But the 2520 comes a little bit later. But if I'm understanding correctly, then what's confirming and giving impetus to it is the repeating of history and the restraint of Islam. If I missed something, please don't hesitate to correct me. Did that answer it, Christine?
I don't even know what I said anymore. I don't know.
Oh, you were asking about Elder Parminder coming in and confirming the 25, or then opening up the 2520 and confirming the methodology.
So that's not correct.
I would say it's added to it. I would add it to it. It's like another aspect, but I mean, I might be wrong in the words that I'm using to describe it. But the confirmation that we're going through here anyways, from the confirmation is of the methodology of line upon line is the repeating of the history, the repeating of the repeating of the restraint of Islam. And we know that the restraint of Islam is the second way mark in the Millerite history. So we see at 9/11 a restraint of Islam, which is then helps us to place 9/11 as that second way mark, which confirms line upon line because you have a repeating of the history. If there's more to that, I don't know just as of yet, or not remembering it, but that's just in the studies that we're just going through. So Elder Parminder comes along later with the 2520 and it continues to establish the methodology, or I don't know if it establishes, it uses the methodology. So, because if you look at 1798, and and then you have William Miller raised up, and he uses the day equals the year. Then Litch uses the day equals the year. So you're going to use that methodology on that line. So in 1989, you get line upon line, these repeating histories opening up, and then the repeating histories or line upon line is confirmed when you see the repeating of the restraint of Islam happen. So therefore you place 9/11 as the second waymark, the repeating of history. But then you're going to continue the methodology, which continues to develop. The methodology then is used throughout the reform line. And it's the methodology, line upon line, that takes us all the way through. So when he comes along, he's using the methodology to continue to guide and direct. That makes sense? Christine?
Yeah, that's good. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Okay. So I don't know if I'm missing anything, but if I am, feel free to correct me. Because I am just myself finally starting to connect some dots, but I don't have them all connected to make sure. So what we've gone through now is the first two articles. We've seen that we've seen the line upon line confirmed by going back to the Millerite history and looking at the first and second woe to give us the start of the third woe, when Josiah Litch uses the same methodology, the day equals a year in Bible prophecy, to predict the fall of the Ottoman Empire. And we take that down to 9/11 now when we have a restraint of Islam. And I lost my train of thought. We take that down to 9/11 when we see the restraint of Islam. So you have the empowerment of the message by the confirming of the methodology. And then we also took the baptism of Christ. We went on the Omega of the ancient Israel. We took the baptism of Christ. That's their second waymark. And we've now established the second waymark is 9/11. So now we take baptism down to 9/11. And then we take enter into a covenant and the start of a new church, and the leadership passed by. So we get those from the end of ancient Israel. We get the confirmation of the methodology using the first and second woe equals the third woe, and taking that into the restraint of Islam being the beginning, or the strike of Islam, the attack on the armies of Rome at 9/11, and then the restraint of Islam. So giving us our second waymark. So next week we'll start looking at the latter rain, or whenever we finish work on this again, we'll be looking at the sealing and the latter rain and the judgment beginning at 9/11. So keep that in mind, Susan, when I call on you. You're going to have more to repeat.
Don't do that to me.
Because we're going to review. Go ahead.
In the line, beginning of ancient Israel, does the AI stand for?
If I'm understanding correct, it's AI, the city that they went in. And I'm not clear on that because I know that Jericho comes first, so I'm still a little confused on that one. I think I'm going to ask him about that. But just to go back, but AI, I'm pretty sure he's talking about the city AI when they went into AI, but I need to confirm that. So just to do it again, okay. So just to do again a real quick review, the first we're looking at the 12 prophetic events that occurred on September 11th, and the first one we looked at was the four winds were restrained and the third woe began, and we went through that study. So we want to keep that in mind as we're looking at the lines here, that the four winds are restrained. Let's see, the four winds are restrained and the third woe began. So you have the attack using the first and second woe, and that the attack is on the armies of Rome. So you see the attack on the army of Rome, which is the United States. Then you see November 9, 2001, that Islam is restrained. So you see at 9/11, the third woe beginning. And then what we just went through was the first and second angels' messages and how they're empowered. The first angel's message is empowered by the second angel's message. I said that wrong. By the second angel's message. Let's see, the first angel's message was empowered and the second angel's message arrives. And they are to be repeated at the end of the world. So the first angel is empowered at the confirming of the methodology. And then the second angel arrives. And God enters into a covenant and proved line upon line. And then leadership was passed by. So if you take that and just try to summarize that, Susan, that's where we're at. The Islam is restrained. The third woe begins. Leadership is passed by. God enters into a covenant. You have baptism here. The first angel's message is empowered. The second angel arrives. You have the arrival of Christ. You have the second angel arriving here. John the Baptist being the first, Christ being the second. William Miller being the first, and then you have the second angel. I don't know if you put that as Josiah Litch, maybe it is, but I don't know if I have that correct. But you have the arrival of the
Question.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you're just saying was what I was kind of thinking over and wanted clarity on. So William Miller comes in at 1798, right, with the methodology of the year-day principle, and then, okay, what you had read before on the second article paragraph, the 12 prophetic things that we need to know, and we're on the second article paragraph. If you could go to that. That's not it. Article 2, there. So the first angel's message was empowered by the second angel, right?
No.
Because, but just hear me out so you can see where my confusion is.
Okay.
So if William Miller comes in and he's got this year-day principle, the person who proves it is Josiah Litch. So William Miller's methodology is not empowered until Josiah Litch gives the prediction that gives the impetus. So that's where I don't understand. I need some clarity how the first angel's message is empowered. I thought it was by the second angel's message confirming it. But there it says, and the second angel's message arrived as they are being repeated at the end of the world. I don't get that. Am I making any sense to you?
Yeah, but there's two different things happening here. And if you remember what he said in part of that article was that you have the first three waymarks are the first, second, and third angel's message without distinguishing between arrival and empowerment. And the first in Revelation 14, you have the angels flying in the midst of heaven. And then you have Revelation 10 and then Revelation 18, where you have the angel on the earth. And I don't know if it might have said something else, but coming down. And so it's not flying in the midst of heaven. And that's what represents the empowerment of the first angel's message. And we see at 9/11 that it's the confirming of the methodology, just like in on the Millerite line, that it's the confirming of a day equals a year in Bible prophecy. But that then brings the arrival of this at that same time as the arrival. What's the second angel's message say? In Revelation 14, what does the second angel's message say?
Babylon is fallen.
Yeah. So you have the confirmation of the first, which is empowering proving the methodology and giving an impetus to the work. And the second angel is Babylon is fallen. Can't say that I have it all either, but
Well, you just added part that I had forgotten about, so I appreciate that, but I'm still trying to marry it all together in my mind.
me too. We're marrying it together, all together in our minds. But we can see, I think we can understand that we see God enters into a covenant with his people after he proves line upon line. We can see that the SDA leadership was passed by. When we look at the lines, we see that there's a Christ is confirmed as the Messiah. The leaders are passed by, and God enters into a covenant with his people. And you can also see that what's going to happen now is you start the building. And we're not there yet, but you start the building. So, so then when you come down here, you have God enters into a covenant. You have the baptism, which represents entering into a covenant, the confirmation of the methodology, right? And you have the restraint of Islam. You have the beginning of the third woe, the using the first woe plus the second woe equals the third woe. You saw that in the first woe that, and this was the point, I thank you, Phil, for remembering it, that that Islam strikes the armies of Rome. So, and they hurt the armies of Rome, but don't kill. The second woe is where they kill. So you have the hurting here, and then the restraint of Islam at 9/11. So we'll add more to this next week. Anything else, Susan? And don't ever be afraid to ask, because I mess up and I'm still trying to get it all together too. And so the questions are actually really, really good because they help us all to sharpen each other.
I just appreciate all the clarity that's been given. No questions right now at the moment, but thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, so do you want to close in prayer, Susan?
Okay. All right. Dear Lord, thank you so much, Lord, for your patience with each and every one of us. Thank you for your mercy, Lord. I know I don't deserve how good you've been, but I'm very thankful, and I'm sure I speak for others who are praying now. Thank you, Lord, for these great lessons and how they're put for us, how Aaron has laid them out for us, and how Elaine is diligently going through it and helping us. And thank you, Lord. We know that you're going to have us ready. We have faith, Lord, that you have this all planned and taken care of for us. So we just appreciate you so much, Lord, and give us a good night's rest, and we'll have a good day tomorrow. Thank you, Lord, for hearing this prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.